Imagine a world where you knew that you mattered and you belonged. The people cared about you because we were so darn good at listening to one another, no matter how different we are. That is what Sidewalk Talk is doing by putting listeners on sidewalks all over the world so that we can practice the art of connecting. Join me, founder and director Traci as I interview experts on the fine art of human connection and interview some of our volunteers who've been listening on the sidewalk and even some of the folks that we've listened to. And if you want to volunteer, consider joining us at sidewalk-talk.org. Karen Brailsford and I had a live conversation on the Sidewalk Talk Facebook page, and I am now bringing her to our podcast because at the time her book was not out, and I'm so excited to get it. Her book, called Sacred Landscapes of the Soul, is medicine for our time. Karen is a spiritual advisor. She's affiliated with the Agape Center, but she's also a longtime writer. She's written for Newsweek, Elle, People, In Touch, and E! Entertainment. Her daughter is an actress. You may have seen her in The Hate U Give, Amanda Stenberg. And it was fun talking with Karen because I got a perspective on Hollywood that was compassionate, but B, we spoke right after the uptick in social justice awareness and in a consciousness raising of the conversation. And as a Black woman, I asked Karen, how do you deal with the tragedy and the anger? And she had the coolest way to deal with anger that I even had folks on the Facebook Live going, oh my God, I just did it. It feels so good. So enjoy this conversation. It will for sure lift your spirits. Please go out and get Karen's book that just came out called Sacred Landscapes of the Soul. It is a book you're going to want to get in hardback. It is like holding heartfelt poetry in your hands to soothe your soul. I got an advanced copy digitally, and it's lyrical, and it's provocative in its visual layout, and yeah, it's just one you're going to want to kind of keep around for those hard moments. So really excited for the rest of you that didn't get to join us live, for you to meet Karen Brailsford. Karen Brailsford, we're already live. That's how fast this software is. I'm so excited to get to connect with you and introduce you to all of our listeners around the world, because I'm hoping, A, that we can get some spiritual sustenance going for all of us now, and that everyone will go buy your book in September when it's out. But you've got, gosh, a long history of being a writer and an editor. And then I was reading more about you, and you paint and you sing. And you're a licensed spiritual practitioner at Agape. You're a mom to an actress. I mean, you've done all kinds of stuff. How did you arrive here, first of all? Just give us a little history of Karen.
Well, thank you for asking. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all those who are listening in. How did I arrive here? It's so interesting. I just wrote a piece recently that sheds a little bit of light on that. I grew up in the South Bronx. And I always had a spiritual thirst. I grew up going to a Baptist church, and I always knew that I wanted to be connected to spirit. So I think the creativity, the singing, the painting, for me, it's always that I've been searching to express, searching to create, because I think that's at the center of my connection to spirit or God or the universe. So that's how I arrived here. I basically think that by connecting to these ways of creating and these different hats that I wear, that I'm expressing the divine, I'm expressing spirit, and that's why I am here. That's fully why I'm here, to do that.
You know, it reminds me, because I was looking at some of we can thank Beth for sending me an advanced copy of your book, but I was loving how you broke the book down in these sections. I just want to read some of the section names because they were really meaningful to me. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm just going to kind of keep this on a Post-it near my bed or something. You had a section that says when we're in the thick of it, when we don't know what to do, when we're seeking peace, when we're frozen with fear, when we catch a vision for our lives, and when we dare to free fall. And it almost felt like it gave me permission to be going through any one of those experiences without feeling ashamed about it. I'm curious how spirituality, from your perspective, helps us through some of these things.
I think it helps us through these things. These stages that you refer to are the different landscapes of the soul. So I was able to define 9 different landscapes, from the forest to the mountaintop to the ocean to the riverbank. And the idea is that in any given moment, we are experiencing our humanity. Sometimes we are frustrated and we're confused and we're angry. And sometimes there's a glimpse in which we feel, oh my goodness, I know why I'm here. Oh my goodness, it's so wonderful to paint this painting. Oh my goodness, it's so great to be able to add 2 + 2, that we have a spark. And so I define that as the oneness, feeling this connection to all of life, or just when we're happy with our friends or with our family members, or having a really blissed out time for no reason why. And so the idea is that we move in and out of these different landscapes, sometimes within our lifetime, sometimes within a single day. Maybe it feels that way within a
Yeah.
single hour. So the idea was that, yes, I don't want anyone to feel judged. The idea is that we are to love ourselves right where we are, to know that we are loved right where we are, and that whatever is bubbling up inside, that it's there, it's showing us something, it's revealing something, and ultimately it's helping to heal us when we look at it, when we simply be, when we let it, we allow these feelings to come up for us.
Mm. So I'm almost hearing this quality of giving people a map to listen to their own soul so that they can be with themselves in a healing way, no matter what's
Exactly.
kind of outside.
Exactly. Thank you so much for saying that so succinctly. That's exactly what the idea is, and to really understand that it's okay, that whatever is coming up, that it's okay. One of my favorite quotes or epigraphs, and I say it in the book a few times, because I find myself saying it as I hear it in my own head, coming up from my own soul, is "This too shall pass."
Mm.
That's one of my favorite expressions. Another is "Be still and know," which comes from the Bible. "Be still and know that I am God." And so those 2 expressions, quotations, really anchor me, and they've anchored me throughout my entire life. So they're peppered throughout some of the passages.
Yeah.
There's a thread.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a hard question, a harder
Mhm.
question. One of the things that comes up, certainly in the graduate program that I went to, is that some folks would use spirituality to avoid facing some of the things that they needed to face in their life, to avoid activism, to avoid injustices, to avoid psychological pain. And so it's been something on my mind, and I imagine you're a plethora of wisdom about this. So how do you make that distinction? How can spirituality not be a tool to avoid, but a tool to sustain our action, or what I'd call right action?
To infuse it, to empower it, to
Yeah.
drive it. I am very familiar with the idea that, yes, some people might look at spirituality as kind of airy fairy, or something that we're on the mountaintop,
I think some
meditating
of
all
my
the
friends call me hippie granola, is what they say.
time. Exactly. Well, we talk about at Agape, we talk about spiritual bypassing. And so we don't believe in
Mhm.
spiritual. We believe that we are here to work through this stuff, to deal with it, to look at everything that's bubbling up. So you don't want to spiritually bypass, which means, you know, do the, oh, I'll just meditate over it and pray over it, but not really go deep. So the idea is that we want to dive deeply. And I think that, and we also say, pray and move your feet. Pray and move your
Ooh, I
feet.
like
So
that.
isn't that perfect? Isn't that wonderful? The idea that, yes, you pray and you meditate, and we also vision, in which we catch a vision for what might be coming up in our lives, or we kind of
Mm,
pray and
yeah.
anchor and see possibilities,
Mm,
catching a vision. But at the same time, we're also moving our feet.
yeah.
We're voting, we are living, we're cooking the dinner, we're doing whatever it is that we need to do to sustain ourselves, to sustain our lives. And more importantly, because once we're sustained, we can help others. The idea is that once we are in alignment, once we are taking care of what's coming up for us, then we can truly be a beneficial presence on the planet. And that's the idea behind my book. I state that quite clearly. At least that was my intention. That yes, we want to pray. We want to be inspired by these epigraphs, by these quotes, this great wisdom that's come down through the millennia. We want to do our affirmations. I include those in the book as well. We want to read and be inspired. But yes, we have to act upon it. And of course, this is a perfect week to be talking about this, because yesterday I watched the memorial of John Lewis, and what a wonderful synthesis of deep spirituality and action. So, I mean, he's emblematic. And I think in our country's in civil rights movement, it was all fueled by spirituality and this belief. So they go hand in hand. In hand. And I don't think that we can, I suppose if one decides that's what one wants to do, one can sit on the mountaintop and pray and meditate. But I think in this day and age, for me personally, it's really about deepening and being out in the world. So you're in the world, but not necessarily of the world, so to speak.
Well, I might be a little more radical than you. I mean, what I hear you saying is that spirituality, it taps you into such a soul's mission that you're motivated to move your feet. Right. So I think it'd be hard if you were really tapping into your soul's mission to go sit on, well, maybe some people, I guess, sit on the mountaintop, but most of us, I think right now, are really feeling the desire to move our feet. We're like, wait a minute.
Yes.
We got to wake up to this stuff. What's going on? Yeah. Some for the very first time.
Exactly. And you said the phrase, the words that come to mind, wake up. I think we are really being reminded to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. And how you describe spirituality rather than being used to bypass, I hear you saying, no. It's this well that you drink from so that you can have more energy to get out and do the things that you need to do. Because I do see people burning out right now. Are you seeing that? And how are you supporting them? I know you provide spiritual counseling to people. Like, how do you recommend people work with their burnout?
By being still. I mean, I, in my own life, ebb and flow in terms of the busyness and then the stillness. Whether it's over the course of a week or a month or even a day that I'm taking time out to get centered, and I meditate and I pray, but even just taking a moment to breathe, take 3 deep breaths during the day, that's so centering. I think the power of the breath, it's so immense. And I think meditation is really beneficial because it kind of calms the mind. It calms whatever is happening. And it's an invitation to really be present. So in that moment, can't really be concerned about anything else because you have to be present with what is. So
I really appreciate that you admit that, you kind of go out of balance and come back in balance, and sharing with us that you're using the breath and meditation to sort of, it sounds like you're human just like the rest of us, Karen.
Well, the idea is that the idea as a spiritual practitioner is that I have access to all of these tools that I'm practicing. Notice the word practitioner. Basically, I'm practicing the presence of God. I'm practicing, and it's a practice. It's not something that, all of a sudden you're just there. It's really a practice. And so I am so grateful that I have these tools, that I have the meditation, the affirmations, the deep breathing, yoga, whatever it is one is doing, that these tools enable one to come back to center. And so I'm very aware that, yes, I might go off center, but the idea is that, oh, yes, I get to return home. I get to return to that place of knowing. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I think some people do think that, oh, well, because you go to this particular spiritual center or because you do this, that means that you're never going to have an issue. And that's hardly the case, because we are living in this world and we're going to be challenged by things. We're going to be, angered by things, annoyed by things. but the spiritual tools allow us to come back to center. And there's something
Yeah.
really delicious about that return, about that idea of like, oh, I might be here, but I can just come back. Oh, wow.
Hmm.
And it's always really humbling to realize that, and empowering to realize that no matter what's happening, I
Yeah.
have at my disposal these tools.
I love that frame. That even when you get out of center, if you remember that you have those tools, it's super empowering. I think that's another frame to motivate us to actually use them, right? Because sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
can get off center and not use them, but you're saying, no, it'll actually empower you if you're using them more regularly. I love
Yeah,
that. Love
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Hmm. So I'm going to ask you a question because I just have this gut feeling that you have something so meaningful to say. I have been wrestling with anger during this time, right? Anger comes up, and I wrote my graduate thesis on anger and still feel like I'm a beginner. I mean, shucks, I've been working on this anger stuff for a long time, and there's so much there's so many justified reasons to be angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just would welcome any sort of wisdom that you have for us really making use of our anger to be of service to the divine.
Hmm. Absolutely. I actually did an exercise recently with regards to anger, and I
Ooh,
had
do you
to,
want to
I had
show?
to,
Do you want to show us?
I didn't make it up. I didn't make it up actually. Brother Michael Beckwith, who's the spiritual director and founder of Agape, said this. So I'm just going to pass it on because this is
Please
so
pass it
important.
along.
So get ready, get ready. Yes, he talked
Okay.
about it during the service not that long ago. And so the idea is to take that anger, for instance, that frustration, that anger, and shout and yell something empowering. So, so what we did during this exercise was that, for instance, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say I'm really angry about what's going on in the state of the world right now, and so I say, "This is the greatest day ever." You know, I am evolving and expanding in a most dynamic and powerful way. So that same tonality, you say
Yeah.
something affirming, and it's such a release. It's so interesting because
Wow.
you're still getting out that anger, but the
Yeah.
words that you're echoing into the universe, that you're broadcasting, are so positive, and we know that the universe is responsive, right? So what's going to come back is like this
I love that.
empowering good thing. So I found that to be such a powerful exercise. Isn't that wild to think about that?
I love
So
that
you use the
so
energy,
much.
you utilize the energy, you utilize it, all of it. 'Cause
Right,
we're
because
not
it's
going to bypass
electricity.
anything. We're not going to
Yeah. Oh my
bypass anything. So you get to use that energy. And it's funny because the book itself, the pieces, as you know, I have an intro in which I speak very personally about my family and growing up and my spirituality. But the pieces themselves are to the unknown might seem to be okay. These are just pieces that she's written that come through her, but actually, the book is actually kind of a memoir because I remember
Mm.
where I was when I wrote each piece and what I was going through. So they're very personal stories embedded in the energy of the pieces. And so I wrote them, and Spirit, I believe, gave them to me to administer to my own soul as well. And so
Beautiful.
there were times when I was really angry and something happened. I talk about this I think in a piece in the very beginning about emotions. And I remember, I do believe that the universe is so responsive that you can use anger. And I've given God a deadline.
And does God respond to your
Yeah,
deadlines?
that's
This is
the
what I
funny
wanna know.
thing.
Yeah?
It will respond. I was like, I need this to happen. I was so angry. This was a long time ago in my spiritual journey, but it worked. I couldn't believe this thing. I wanted something to happen by November 1st, and it did. But then I realized, well, what if I didn't even have to make that demand? What would it feel like energetically if I could have the same result without having that kind of like, yeah, give this to me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really all about the journey and how we want to experience it and how we want to show up. Because I do believe that the universe will just respond to that because it responded in that instance. But I thought, oh,
Yeah.
I don't really have to threaten. Do I have to really threaten the universe? Can I just say, I know it is. I know that everything is working together for my highest good. I know that everything is divinely orchestrated, that everything is rushing in right
Mm.
here, right now. To me, that feels better than like ranting and raging like a toddler. So I've chosen
All
to
right.
do.
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you, Karen, but golly, it does seem like a tough time. And I mean, your book is coming out. We've got, just more media coverage of police brutality, and we're in a global health pandemic. We have protesters that are being accosted by the police, and, I mean, name it. We got environmental, I mean, I don't want to depress everyone, but these are the realities that we're in right now. And you're telling me that we can feel good? Is that what you're saying?
I'm telling you that we can acknowledge what's happening in the outer world and
Yeah.
that we can actually have some semblance of understanding and compassion for ourselves. And I don't want to use the word control, but we can actually utilize certain tools to shore ourselves up so that we're able to face what's happening in the
Mm,
greater world, in the bigger world. Because, yes, this doesn't look very pretty right now, does it?
mm-mm,
It doesn't.
mm-mm.
But I believe that this is also a time of really powerful awakening, that something really good is happening in the midst of all of this. And we see that.
Yeah.
We see what's coming, what's bubbling up to the surface. And when things bubble up to the surface, I believe that they're doing so because they are seeking to be healed. So the
Yeah.
racism, you know, the ideas that in this country, in America, that people can't get the um, medical needs met. I mean, that was always happening, and now we see it in a more
Right.
dynamic and really stark way. So we're discussing it,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
talking about it, and I believe in the end that it's all working towards good. I
Yeah.
have to
Well, and
believe
I'm
that.
just
It's
reminded
who
of,
I am. That's something that's in me that I have to believe that. And so, yes,
yeah.
it feels really uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that there aren't horrible things happening. I think a lot of us know people who have transitioned or have certainly been struck by COVID. I know I have. And yet, in the midst of this, there's this sense of something powerful is happening, something creative is happening, something is emerging. Something is emerging. Having watched the memorial for John Lewis yesterday, I had that
Mm,
sense. I was teary eyed and emotional about who he was and his legacy, but he's passed on the mantle. I mean, he did so in an editorial that he wanted to be published on the day of his
unbelievable.
memorial. So he's handed something to us that,
Mm,
and if he could be so inspired and still be so hopeful, he was always hopeful. I think
yeah.
it's incumbent upon all of us to
Yeah.
be that way.
Well, I knew that you were going to say that. I know because, and you already said it in the interview that it's by tapping into and using the tools of spirituality that we gain the sustenance for these hard times. And that's why I'm kind of thrilled to get to talk with you today, because I just feel like I wish your book was coming out today. That's what I wish. Um, I want to ask you, there's this beautiful question you ask right in the beginning of the book. I don't know what I want to ask about it, but I just want to say it and talk about it and
Mm-hmm.
see where we go. But I love that when you said, "Why am I here and how can I help?"
Mm.
I love that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like a soul question that I mean, does it take a lifetime to answer that question? Because I can imagine you can be listening and listening and listening to that question for the whole of your life.
I think so. I think that's the charge, to keep
Mm,
listening and to keep tapping within. I think the idea is that there shouldn't be a finite answer. Maybe at age 10, it's one purpose, maybe 20 and 40 and 60. It keeps evolving because we keep evolving and we keep listening and we keep catching a greater vision of our individual purposes. So,
yeah. Yeah. All right. I got to ask you a question about your kid. You've got a kid in Hollywood, and Hollywood's not an easy place to stay spiritual. Like, how do you infuse that as a mom to a
hmm,
child that's being put into this kind of machine in a way? And how do you keep that sort of steady hand with all of it?
Well, I'd like to think that, well, first of all, I'm going to ask you a question because you said Hollywood is X, and then you said, how do you know?
Ooh,
And my question
you
is,
want to
ooh,
know
so
what I'm assuming, huh?
you're making certain assumptions. You're making certain
Yeah.
assumptions, which is what people tend to do, which is what most people tend to do about anything, right? We see something and we have an idea and a judgment about it. So I
Hmm.
would say that we are each, including my child, my daughter, we are each spiritual beings, and that we come here with a purpose and with an intention. And so I don't think I so much as was. I think your question was like, how do I do something? I think that it was a collaborative dynamic between my daughter and myself in terms of her having set certain intentions and purposes in terms of why she was on the planet, and then I got to support that. And so I
Uh-huh.
have this idea that we each that we choose our parents, and our parents
Hmm.
and that the kids choose us as well. Like it goes, it's a mutual dynamic and relationship. And so I see myself as supporting a vision and growing and expanding from that, and that she does exactly the same thing. But to say that Hollywood is a certain way, I certainly worked as a journalist, as you probably read,
Right.
in entertainment. And so I had really amazing experiences
Mm.
doing interviews because I would connect with the individual in the way that one might during a practitioner session. Even before I
Mm.
became a practitioner, I didn't know that's what I was doing. So, and I'm sure that's what you do as you, this is what you do with your wonderful organization, that you listen. And so the interviews that I did in Hollywood were about that. And believe it or
Mm.
not, I prayed with people on movie sets too. So
Mm.
I think that actually LA and Hollywood, there's a deep understanding. There's a quest and a search. That's why people in Hollywood talk about, or folks on the East Coast where I'm from talk about how Hollywood is so like, oh, they're so, la la, they're so kind of like granola and whatever. And that's because there is this idea of expanding and searching and
Mm.
finding the self and finding this connection to spirit, whether or not it's articulated that way. So I think that Hollywood itself, perhaps it's emblematic of the dichotomy that
Yeah.
exists in the world at large, and it seems really big and dynamic
Mm.
that, oh, you have these people who are abusive and you have these people who are making these movies. But I think we're all human and we're all searching, and
Hmm.
ultimately that's what this is about.
I love that you're calling me out on my assumptions, first of all, because I like that kind of truth telling. So I'll just name that first of all.
Oh,
Second of all, I'm kind of like reading between the lines, listening a little more deeply to what you're saying, and I almost hear
mhm.
you saying, "Look, you're gonna what you seek, you shall find," and that you bring so much soul into the interviews that you have, and so you were having a version of Hollywood that isn't the stereotype. It sounds like.
Well, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm not saying that there aren't certain dynamics and things that I might not be happy with or like, but I don't judge it all. Perhaps
Sure.
I'm understanding that. It's so funny. You just reminded me that years ago I used to think I had this theory. I don't know if it's really true, but I had this theory that maybe in a way that celebrities, because they are there for everyone, they're so exposed that individuals, we project all of our own desires
Oh,
onto them, and they
oh,
are
yeah.
human beings who are also just navigating, life itself. And so I had this idea that maybe they are kind of like apostles in a way that,
Oh,
they,
interesting. Sure.
that they kind of are sacrificing themselves in some way. So this is kind of out there, but that's just a theory
I
that I've
can go
had.
without there. I think the leaders too, people that lead
Mhm.
big organizations, same thing. They are stand-ins for mom and dad that we didn't have, and we project. I mean, I'm with
Yeah,
you on that. I
yeah,
hear that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. So, tell us why you wrote the book. Tell us what you're
Mm,
hoping that I'm going to ask it a different way because I want to bring people in.
sure.
When somebody gets your book in their hands and they have it sitting before them and they open it and they start to read it, what do you hope happens for them?
I hope that the words literally, jump off the pages and that enter their souls, that they take away something that's so soothing, that the book itself is a balm, that the book
Mm,
becomes a moment for them to take a deep breath,
mm,
and to forget whatever else is spiraling around them, to remember who and whose they are, to remember, oh, yes, I can pause. I am loved. The very universe is supporting me. All of these, I see the book as a way of providing comfort. I see it as a way of leading to insight, a moment of introspection. I see it as a way of soothing and calming fears. I see it as a way of my connecting, that brought the book through me, that
mm,
energy, that dynamic, that creative inspiration, that it's a way of the reader to actually connect with that same powerful presence.
mm. Yeah, thank you for writing it because even just looking at the layout of the pages and there's art in it feels so reverent to the words. And then there's reference to so many different spiritual traditions and poets and thinkers peppered throughout the book. So it really is that book that you're going to want to keep by your bed. And when you wake up in the middle of the night, tormented by something in your mind, it's the thing that you're going to grab to sort of find ease again and peace.
You are the perfect reader of my book. It's exactly what I wanted. And the idea that you've noticed the art, I mean, I had to give a shout out to the design team at Wyatt Mackenzie and to Nancy Cleary, the publisher, because when I got the book itself, I just couldn't believe how she was able to marry, my words, spirit's words, the affirmations, which I call peak speak,
Yeah.
the epigraphs, which indeed, yes, it's poets, it's the Bible, it's different spiritual traditions. I was an English lit major, so I love poetry. So that
Okay.
so there's a lot of me in the book, and somehow she laid it out in such a beautiful way. I was really inspired and gratified and felt that, okay, yes, as I always say, oh yes, there is this God. This is proof of it. So
It's beautiful. It's
thank you so
beautiful.
much.
So excited. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, and I just feel a really sweet exchange and connection with you. So thank you for filling
Mm.
my own heart and being in connection together here. And this is where I actually want to step out of the way and let you be in connection with the 8,000 listeners that sit on sidewalks all over the world to offer really heart centered listening to anybody. And we have this tradition where you can offer directly to them either a wish or words of wisdom as we
Mm.
close.
Well, what comes up for me is to offer my gratitude. My gratitude. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your loving heart. Thank you for your willingness to be of service and to listen deeply, to be inspired, because it is a two-way street, I believe, that they are being as enriched by their listening as the individuals who are being listened to. So it's a dynamic. So each moment becomes a namaste moment for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because when one is lifted up, we all are lifted up. And so I think the work that you're doing is honoring and helping the world at large.
Mm. Karen Brailsford and everyone listening, September 20th, is that the launch date for
September
said?
1st. September 1st.
Oh, September 1st. Okay, Sacred Landscapes of the Soul, aligning with the divine wherever you are. I will guarantee you that it will be on my nightstand. So if you want to be like me, you're going to do the same. And I'm not just doing a sales pitch. This is really what I'm going to do. So if you want you want a book club, you just reach out. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work
Thank
and for
you
birthing this
so
book
much. It
for
was an
us.
honor and a pleasure and a blessing to be here.
All right. Be well, everyone. Thank you for being here and listening to this episode of the Sidewalk Talk podcast. If you like what you heard, tell your friends, tell your family, like and comment on the podcast publisher that you're listening from, and subscribe. This will help us get the word out about changing our culture to one of connection.